of course, we are going to start the conversation, the most crucial one. Welcome to the Blueprint 2025 session, Greening India's Growth Engine. That is what we're focusing on today. Now, this conversation is more than about just climate targets. It's about India's strategy to sustain high growth development while transitioning to a cleaner, more resilient economy under global uncertainty that we're witnessing today. Today, as you of course have seen, we have an exceptional panel to help unpack what that blueprint is going to look like in implementation in practice. We're going to be talking about macroeconomic underpinnings, global capital mobilization, as well as the realities of clean energy deployment and what it looks like in terms of practical implementation. We have, of course, introduced our esteemed panel as well. Let me just start this conversation. Let me come to you, Mr. Bhupinder Bhalla, first. I want to begin by asking you, when we talk about this Blueprint 2035, Greening India's Growth Engine, what does that necessarily mean to you? And when we talk about green and growth, how can we perhaps implement it in a way where we aren't just seeing these two compete with each other, but also reinforce each other?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the question. Essentially, when we say green growth, what we talk about is economic development along with greening of the economy. That's something that we are very interested in. India, as you know, has chosen a model where we are espousing green growth as part of our development model. I feel that it's not necessarily a green energy and economic development are not necessarily, or green growth or growth in per se are not really competing with each other. They're not trade-offs. They're actually complementing each other, and I'll tell you why. Because as you know, when the economy grows, you need energy, you need power. Otherwise the economic development will not happen. The reason we have, our GDP has almost doubled in 10 years is because we've had enough power available to power the industry, agriculture, homes, and the other economic services. It's also important to note that, when we talk about greening, when we have chosen a model where capacity building is encouraged. But along with capacity building, we are also encouraging manufacturing. That's something that we are doing. We do not want to be dependent on other nations for our green growth. And therefore, this manufacturing, which is building into our, the green economy, is helping the growth as well. Of course, we need a lot of investments if you support the increasing renewable energy in the power sector. We also need increasing investments in grid stability, grid expansion, modernization, digitalization of the grid, and so on and so forth. So what is happening is that all this is leading to a growth which I would term as a green growth rather than growth per se. Maybe I'll stop at that. I hope that answered the question.
All right, thank you so much for that, Mr. Zutt. Let me just come to you on this as well. Now, as the Vice President for South Asia, you have inherited a region undergoing deep economic and environmental transitions. Now, from your vantage point, what should be the guiding principles for multilateral support, especially from the World Bank, to help a large emerging economy like India align with its ambitions?
So thank you very much for that question, and I'd like to thank the Bharat Climate Forum for inviting me to join today. I think the first thing I want to say in response to that is what is the overall ambition that India should be pursuing at this stage in its development from an energy perspective? And I think in one sentence, I would say that it needs to be greening its energy supply. It also needs to be greening its energy demand. Doing those two things together will improve its energy security, and at the same time improve the resilience of both households and firms to climate vulnerability. So that's, in one sentence, what India should be doing. The costs of doing this are significant, But India is a developing country, and it's going to require spending money to achieve the energy security that it needs and to support its ambition for achieving Viksit Bharat by 2047. Our estimate in the World Bank is that greening energy supply, which basically means further investment in renewables, in hydropower, in safe nuclear energy, will require about a little under $70 billion per year going forward, of which about 50 billion over the next 4 years, each of the next 4 years, would go to doubling the amount of power available in the country. About 12 billion would go to improving grid stability, and about 10 billion to enhancing storage. So these are large numbers. On the energy demand side, greening energy demand, what needs to happen is, and there's a lot of opportunity to do this in India, there needs to be a very substantial reduction in the intensity of energy use per unit of output. Today, India is using about twice as much energy per unit of output as the average for emerging economies and developed economies. So there's a lot of scope to reduce energy intensity, which would help green energy demand. And those two things, greener supply, greener demand, will give us higher energy security. So your question was, what are the policy levers that enable us to do this? And I think there's essentially four things that the government needs to do. The first and most important is to provide a comprehensive, stable, and transparent policy framework for achieving the things I said at the beginning. It's very, very difficult to get either public or multilateral development or private finance into investments in these areas if you do not have a stable, transparent, and comprehensive policy framework. This is a challenge, as N.K. Singh and Mr. Mahajan emphasized this morning, because we're in a federal context, but it's absolutely critical to making this possible. Second, we need a modernization of the financial sector in India, and that means introducing systems and regulations that enhance the ability of the economy to use guarantees, asset monetization, blended finance, and so on. And on the side of the multilateral institutions, there are things that we can also do, which N.K. Singh emphasized this morning, on leveraging philanthropies, using hybrid capital, securitization, et cetera. And that's what we're targeting in the work that we're doing in the World Bank Group. Third would be, the government can help set priorities by targeting interventions in the energy sector that promote those things that I started out by saying: greener energy supply, energy demand, ways of enhancing firm and household resilience to vulnerability. So targeting investments, prioritizing investments, signaling to the market the direction in which it wants to travel is also critical. So that's the third one. And then I think the fourth thing, just building on what my neighbor here said earlier about the confluence of development and green energy, keeping a strong focus on essentially a triple bottom line, which is you can make investments in development, which are at the same time investments in energy sustainability, affordability, reliability, and also household and firm resilience. So ensuring that you're looking at all investments from that perspective would also be very, very important.
All right, I hope we were all taking notes there. Now, Mr. Amitabh Kant, let me just come to you and let's just build on this further. You understand best that the Indian industry faces multiple simultaneous pressures from climate impacts. We're talking about carbon standards, global supply chain. We've talked about this. Now, what transition risks are most underestimated today, in your view?
First of all, we must understand that India imports close to $200 billion worth of fossil fuel every year. 50% of India is still to be built. If we are to become a $30 trillion economy by 2047, that means we need to grow at about 8.5 to 9% year after year for 3 decades. And India must become the first country in the world to industrialize and urbanize through a process of decarbonization. And this means that we need to declare an industrial war on decarbonization. We are the only country in the world which has actually demonstrated its ability to do vast amount of solar. We've been able to do 50% of our total energy based on renewables at low costs. No other country has been able to do it. We did this through policy. It wasn't government driven, but government brought the policy. Private sector did it, and private sector could attract private equity, venture funds, etc. They brought in the technology. So policy is critical. Your ability to attract private finance from across the world through private sector is important. And they bring in then the technology. So policy, technology, finance, all these 3 things are critical. What we are seeing today because of geopolitics in one part of the world is a war and annexation for fossil fuel. What India must demonstrate is our war on decarbonization. And in the next 5 years, India must demonstrate its great ability to become a champion in solar, wind, battery, or entire supply chains. Not one component, but entire supply chains. Because you need to, from being an importer of fossil fuel, India needs to become an exporter of clean energy. And only India can do it because no other country is climatically blessed as India is. No other country has the climatic condition which India has. Today we produce green hydrogen at $4.50 per kilogram. The Prime Minister's objective is that by 2030 we should be producing green hydrogen at $1 per kilogram, and that means that we will become the cheapest producer of green hydrogen, the cheapest exporter of green hydrogen, the biggest, largest manufacturer of electrolyzers in the world. Now, all this from moving from an importer of fossil fuel to an exporter of clean energy by 2030 means that you need clear vision and strategy, you need industrial policy at scale, you need absolutely cutting-edge supply chain execution, and to my mind, ruthless implementation for the next 8 years, and that is what India must demonstrate across solar, across wind, across battery, and critical mineral processing. Because you may have critical mineral, but processing is the key. And processing then becomes an input into all these items for manufacturing. And India must demonstrate that its process of industrialization and urbanization and its quest for being a Viksit Bharat by 2047 will not be through a process of fossil fuel, but will be through a process of decarbonization and clean energy.
All right, so you raised a lot of pertinent issues there also. Now, Dr. Jaiswal, let me just come to you if you would like to expand on what Mr. Kant just said. And also, over the last decade, India has made visible progress also on climate action, continuing to grow its economy. We've seen that. That's been demonstrated in this answer, previous answer as well. As a senior parliamentarian and someone who has worked in clean energy segment, what do you see as the key success factors behind this momentum, and which policy choices would you say have most effectively aligned climate action with this?
Good morning, everyone. In my opinion, it's the leadership. Since last 15 years, we have changed a lot. And especially in renewables and energy efficiency. These two have driven what we have achieved in the last 10 years. We started as a simply putting our solar parks and wind parks here. But soon we have made a transformation. We did a proper commitment. When we introduced it was quite costly, but still we are putting the same commitments which we have earlier promised, and that has transformed. And second thing is energy efficiency. It is started with Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh was the first state under Mr. Dhumal that they distributed free LED bulbs to each and every citizen. And within 1 year, they were able to save 56 crore rupees. After 2014, the transformation occurred in whole India. We distributed 36 crores LEDs under Ujala scheme, and that saved 9,000 megawatts of electricity. Especially, it worked a lot at the peak hours when it was needed. Slowly, we put renewables at each and every level. This has transformed in the last 10 years because of the policies which have been made. We were encouraging it. We have got a prime minister who started introducing renewables to Gujarat as a chief minister. And when he became our prime minister, in Paris, everyone was skeptical that what India is going to do and what will be its commitment. But when we announced that we will be putting 175 gigawatts by 2030, that time I was there in Paris, everyone was shocked how you can do that. We achieved this milestone by 2022. We have committed 500 gigawatts in 2030. And this is only because of the commitment of the leadership. The government is determined that we have to achieve our energy efficiency, as well as in last 10 years, we have put whatever the problems we are facing, slowly we have took it as a challenge, we solved it, and ultimately, till now, we have achieved, which nobody has thought that India could do it at the time of Paris. And now, last year, we were the second biggest producers of renewables, and that proves if the policies are proper, if the leadership is committed for climate change, climate protection, then things will happen, and we have shown the way that how a developing economy can transform itself from fossil fuel. We are still dependent on fossil fuel, but we are changing it very fast, and last 10 years has been transformative on renewables and energy efficiencies. Now what Mr. Amitabh Kant was saying, this is our next stage, and we are going to achieve it in next 8 years or 5 years. Definitely, yes, what Mr. Kant has said. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, Ms. Bhalla, let me just come to you also. When we talk about the promise of India, of course, there are a lot of challenges that lie ahead also, and let's just address them one by one. If we were to talk about green hydrogen, solar storage, renewables, all of that, of course, requires not just generation, but a robust manufacturing and supply chain ecosystem as well, something that Mr. Azan also touched on earlier. So what's your take on the key policy levers there, which he has, if you want to build on what he said earlier?
Just to add to what my fellow speakers said. One is, going into the nitty-gritty. One is that, we have a system of encouraging domestic manufacturing, as I mentioned. So we have a policy called ALMM, Authorized List of Modules and Manufacturers, under which we mandate that modules made in India must be the ones which can be used in India. And we have a similar policy for wind turbines as well. Now, this has been very, very important to the increase in the manufacturing size in the country. This policy must be followed consistently and continued, because this has really helped in our increasing our manufacturing base. it needs to be expanded. And DVA, the domestic value addition component, must be included so that it becomes a little more robust. It now, as you know, it is now being expanded to the upstream components as well, and that is very important. If you don't want to be only the last stage manufacturer, but the entire value stream, then you must have manufacturing across the entire chain, and this is something which must continue. Secondly, storage is going to be very, very crucial. Now we are in, if you talk to the industry, you talk to the discoms, they are still a little, apprehensive about the variability of renewable energy. So therefore, now that the bidding that is happening, a storage-based tender which is happening in India, you're getting world record prices. We are now reaching a stage where we can provide firm power with storage at much lesser cost than the thermal or any other energy. And therefore, along with flexibility and firm ability, this RE is now viable. And therefore, I think storage must continue to play a big part in the next 5 to 7 years. It'll do more, but in the next 5 years, we must give emphasis on storage. In fact, storage must be built into every bidding that we do as a matter of policy, and that will encourage availability of firm power through renewables. A third is, we have a PLI schemes. We have several PLI schemes. We have a PLI scheme for solar PV modules. I feel we have, of course, the National Green Hydrogen Mission. We have incentives for electrolyzer manufacturing. I think we need to expand the PLI scheme to cover the crucial components of the value chain. And it's going to be important because it will give the comfort to the industry when they want to put up investments. I think R&D is going to be as important as it has always been. Maybe we have not succeeded too much in renewables to that extent. I think what I would like is that we should identify 15, 20, 40, 50 potential innovations and give targeted support to some of them so that we are able to achieve TRL 7, 8 and above for those specific technologies. And last but not the least, I think we are not going to get there unless we have the people who are ready to power our solar plants, RE plants, and of course also in the entire value chain. And therefore, capacity building is going to be very important. So I think these are the policy measures which can allow us to succeed in the way that our country is planning to do so.
That's interesting that you mentioned that because, Mr. I was just going to come to you as well. Now, India will require large-scale, long-term capital as well to meet its green industrial ambitions. Now, from your point of view, where should India look to secure reliable international finance for its green growth priorities, and what innovations in global financial architecture or risk sharing do you believe are most essential?
So thanks very much for that question, which I think is an incredibly important question and one that we struggle with at the World Bank Group every single day. I think what Mr. Bhalla was talking about just a few moments ago, and to some extent Mr. Kant also, when they were talking about the importance of leveraging private sector investment in this area is critical. So I think the first and most important thing is that the mindset of government should very much be, what can it do to help the private sector invest in green energy? And it should do everything it possibly can to help the private sector invest in green energy, except impeding competition. And I add that rider at the end because we want to ensure that the investors in green energy remain competitive, and so they need to be exposed to market forces to remain competitive. So what can be done to enhance the opportunities for the private sector? Now, obviously, the private sector is not going to invest unless it can make money. There's nothing the matter with that. That's just a fundamental fact. And I think what Mr. Bhalla was saying about, and also the Member of Parliament, sorry, I don't know your name, about the encouraging degree to which the private sector has engaged, it's very clear that the fundamental change that's happened over the last 10 to 15 years in renewables is that we've gone from a model where, for instance, solar and wind require subsidization to one where they are competitive with fossil fuel sourced energy without subsidies. But there are still some areas where subsidies of various kinds are going to be required. And I think storage is still one at the moment. I think green hydrogen is another. So there are vanguard elements of the green energy transition which do still require subsidies as technologies are strengthened, improved, and costs driven further down by achieving higher scale. So I think what needs to happen is government financial intervention, multilateral development bank intervention needs to focus on those areas and not the areas where subsidization is not required. Now then it becomes a question of where is that money going to come from. On the World Bank side, as N.K. Singh was stressing this morning, having chaired the review of the MDB structure a few years ago, and also challenging all of the MDBs a few years ago to expand their financial capacity. What we are doing in the World Bank is very much following that blueprint. So we're not just doing straight loans out of IBRD or IDA any longer. We're emphasizing the private sector side of our business, which are IFC, the International Finance Corporation, and also the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, MIGA, to make sure that we are using World Bank capital to crowd in as much private finance as we possibly can. And we're also working more closely with philanthropies. We are introducing hybrid capital into our own capital structure. We are putting a much greater emphasis on equity investments through IFC than we have done in the past. It's not just debt anymore. We are focusing on securitization of investments that we have made so that we can distribute those investments to the private sector, to, if you like, passive investors in developing country energy investments. You know, we're basically building our balance sheet so that we can support a lot more. At the same time, governments need to be doing essentially the same thing. They need to be prioritizing specific elements in the investment, in the supply chain where public investment is necessary, blended finance is necessary to enable the private sector to come in. So they need to work on laying off risks as much as possible and providing viability gap funding, if you like, to enable these private sector investments to move forward. So let me stop there.
All right. Now, Mr. Kant, I want to take that point forward of speed and scale with you as well. Now, of course, there's a lot that remains to be unpacked here. When global competitors are moving rapidly through industrial policy, when we talk about subsidies and trade measures to lock in clean tech leadership, which you mentioned as well, where does India need to move faster? Because you have spoken about ruthless implementation and becoming a clean energy exporter. So what do you think should be our priority at this point?
First and foremost, India has time and again demonstrated that it can use its size and scale to bring down prices very sharply. You know, India has procured 500 million LED bulbs, brought down the price of LED bulbs to about 18% of their original price. 18% of the original price. When we did the first tender for electric buses, 6,700 electric buses, the price was about, electric buses prices came down to about almost 10% lower than fossil fuel buses. The Prime Minister said next tender should be for 10,000 buses, third tender will be for 30,000 buses, fourth tender for 100,000 buses. Now, if you do a tender for 30,000 and 100,000 buses, not only that means you are pooling the demand of all the states and union territories of India, and bringing down and doing a tender for 100,000 buses because you're meeting the demand for all of them. What are you doing? You're actually driving down prices. You're making India the center for Make in India of electric buses then. When other countries do it, and there are several analysts who've said that when you move from fossil fuel to clean energy, you pay a premium of 30%. India has demonstrated that India can do it with its size and scale, not at a premium but at a discount. So India must use its size and scale to drive down prices in a range of areas. We've done the new tender for green ammonia. SECI did that. The green ammonia prices are the most competitive prices in the world today. And therefore my belief is that if we are, India needs battery storage, both for electric mobility and for energy storage. Today, you can buy renewable power at 1 rupee in the morning, but 10 rupees in the night. You need 24/7 renewable power. Those who have storage, pump storage, are today generating a lot of wealth because they have storage. Now, battery storage is critical for India. If India does large-scale tenders for battery storage, large-scale tenders, and that's why I'm saying that ambition for large-scale tenders, only India can do it. No other country in the world can do it. Only India has the climatic condition to drive renewables and battery storage and green hydrogen. And these are three areas where India can be the next global champion, move from being an importer to exporter of clean energy. And India should do it not at a premium, but India can do it at a discount. And my belief is that India's private sector is top class, India's success in renewable energy is because of being government policy, but private sector execution. And that's why this policy, private sector play, technology, big scale tendering is very critical to growth. And policy is critical because India, and policy, I'm giving you just one example, that we have to move from, given the quality of air, we have to move from fossil fuel to electric vehicles quickly. By 2030, the entire NCR must be electric vehicles, to my mind, because that's the only form of vehicles which is zero emission. Everything else is, nothing else is zero emission. Now, policy clarity must come in. All government vehicles must go electric. If all government vehicles go electric, then the prices will automatically fall. Money will automatically flow to private sector. There's no shortage of money in the world, let me tell you. There's no shortage of money. There is a shortage of well-structured bids. There's a shortage of well-structured projects. India has the entrepreneurship. India has the size and scale to drive change. And that is what we must do to become the global champion of decarbonization.
All right, thank you so much for spelling that out for us. Dr. Jaiswal, let me just come to you on that. Also, looking ahead, and Mr. Kant has obviously demonstrated where we can be, what we can be prioritizing at this point. Looking ahead, which climate-linked growth areas do you see as the biggest opportunities for India, not only to accelerate economic growth, but also to strengthen economic resilience?
We have to concentrate on three things. First, manufacturing our all renewable plants. And the whole ecosystem has to be Make in India. We are giving PLIs, but I still believe that now PLI should be attached with at least 50 to 70% local manufacturers. Involvement should be there in the industry, then only PLI will be more fruitful to us. So we have set a target of 500 gigawatts by 2030, so we have to move in this direction. The second, and that can generate a lot of employment also, where the expectation is that 5 million employments can be generated through this. Another 3 million can be generated through electric vehicles. We have got our commitment that 30% EV by 2030. So we have to move in, and that will bring down the prices of batteries also. In last 1 year, we are seeing how the prices of storage has declined. So if we move in that direction, it will help us to achieve our goal. And third is energy efficiency. We cannot take it lightly. We have to think about in villages now with net zero cold storage policy has been transformative. Like pump storage policy, we were the first one who made a pump storage policy in the world. Similarly, now we are going ahead with critical minerals and obtaining them in Make in India form will help to generate employments, as well as we have to achieve our goal. And to achieve all these things, we need a proper policy. And for proper policy, we need a bipartisan in parliament, there should be a unison. If we involve our opposition also together, like what we are doing in climate parliament, that we involve all the parties. In 2009, I remember we all members of climate parliament went to meet Mr. Manmohan Singh, and we requested him, and we helped them in JNURM. We all met Prime Minister Modi ji also for G20 that about Osowog, and we are meeting regularly for energy efficiency. As a group, we went to our Honorable Finance Minister. We told her that we are only talking about efficient and we are giving a star ranking unless and until we encourage manufacturing of chillers energy efficient by giving them at least some incentives in GST, in some other forms, unless and until we go for energy efficient air conditioners, energy efficient other manufacturings, then we cannot achieve our goal. So I think renewable energies, manufacturing, EV manufacturing, and energy efficiency, these three will achieve what we want to do. Thank you.
All right, and of course now, by way of our conversations, it's clear that the choices India makes in this decade will determine not just whether we meet our climate targets, but whether India emerges as a credible green growth leader for the global south. As we wrap up, I just want to quickly, in one sentence, ask each of you if you could give us a clear takeaway, one action or perhaps a priority between now and 2035. Let me start with you, sir.
To my mind, India needs to really, one area where India can have huge competitive strength is green hydrogen and green ammonia.
Yes, sir.
Looking forward, India has a tremendous opportunity to create a green economy that produces green jobs, which will enable it ultimately to export clean technology as well as products and services that are green, and that will fetch a very high price on global markets. So this is a real opportunity for India.
I think we cannot waver from the path of green growth we have chosen. It has been successful till now, and it can be successful in the future, provided we have clarity and consistency of policy and a system which supports us.
I think net zero clean tech industrial parks, and we have to support them financially, we have to support in the land, and once we achieve net zero industrial parks for renewables, then only we will be achieving rest of the things.
All right, I would like to thank all of you for the most enriching discussion and dialogue, and thank you so much for really setting the context and the tone for the day. Thank you so much for your time.